into it today because we are joined back by the one, the only Mr. Matt Fraser.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to be back here with you.
Welcome, welcome. How are you? What is going on? How is Rhode Island doing today?
Rhode Island is doing fantastic. Matt Fraser's a little bit tired because I got to tell you, it's like since we last spoke, now having a baby, it's crazy because I feel like I don't get a minute. You know, if it's not the kid, it's the cats. If it's not the cats, if it's the wife. If it's not the wife, it's the dead people. So I can't catch a break, David.
Well, listen, this is why I love your new show, The Frasers Plus One, because a lot of times, you watch someone on TV and you go away and I know what you've been up to, but I think, a lot of the general public doesn't, and there's this where is this person when they're not on TV? Then these shows come back and you're like, what has this person been up to? Your show, this new show really just cuts to the chase, like in the first 15 minutes, like, look, here's what we've been up to. Let's fill you in since COVID and what we've been up to.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we wanted because the tough part is that, literally the finale of our show, I'll never forget it. And I think it's like the last time we spoke, actually, the finale of our show, I remember everyone being together. We were at the finale. It was this big party. And then that was the week where COVID was starting to spread, right? And then everybody was like, I remember everyone being nervous even to come and to, sit down. We didn't know much about it. We didn't know how deadly it was. We didn't know that we had to social distance. That was before all of that. And then the very next week, we were on lockdown. And then everybody was like, what's going to happen here? And the next thing you know, the phone started ringing, events started getting canceled. And literally, I was getting calls and they were like, Matt, I don't think you're going back on tour until 2023. I mean, that's how severe it was.
I mean, right. And that really comes across in this show too. Like before you kind of reinvented yourself with these online readings, which we'll get into. I mean, you really did kind of lose it all, like not to be dramatic, but your show was in its infancy stages. Who knows? It could have had a great, next season if it wasn't COVID. And then the live shows canceled and your whole business was live readings.
I mean, it was crazy because what people don't realize is, I mean, when I tell you it was, okay, so let's just back up. Before this all happened with COVID, right? I remember, so literally we were at the premiere part, the season finale party. And the very next day we had to wake up at 5 a.m. to go to New York City because we had this big press tour to do. My book was coming out. And literally we all got into the tour bus. We were so excited. And then the very next day we do the first book signing. Like we're at the Simon & Schuster World headquarters. We're doing this big launch for the end of the show. And then literally I was scheduled to be on Dr. Oz and all these other platforms, CBS, I mean, iHeartMedia, you name it. And then the very next day, all of a sudden these calls started coming in and they're like, hey, are you in the city? And I'm like, yeah, why? You need to leave the city. Why? There's, this COVID thing is really bad. Next thing you know, Dr. Oz canceled, CBS canceled. We're getting all of these cancellation notices. And we're like, and we didn't even know what was happening. We're like, what is going on? Like, what is happening? And then next thing you know, you couldn't find hand sanitizer. I remember us going and trying to find hand sanitizer because we were I was still in the city and shaking people's hands and hugging people and signing books because we didn't know how bad it was. Nobody knew, right?
Yeah.
And then literally I got the whole press tour got pulled. They're like, just go home. We'll pick up in another couple weeks. I'm like, okay. I come home and the next thing you know, the phones start ringing. They're like, hey, you're not going to be able to tour anymore. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? I'm like, they're saying 2 weeks to slow the spread. I'm like, and I've never been through a pandemic. I don't think anyone's has been through a pandemic. I didn't know what to expect. And they were like, yeah, they're like, I don't know what's going to happen, but everyone's like, at that point, they were actually contemplating ripping out every other seat out of theaters. They were saying that Las Vegas may not be coming back. They're like, hey, I wouldn't plan on touring until 2023. And I remember getting the phone call and being saying to Alexa, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. And come to find out, I mean, they were pretty dead on.
How did all of your online readings start? Here we are in COVID. Where did that start? I mean, people were tuning in with wine and it really kind of became a thing.
It did become a thing. And it still is a thing. And you know what's so weird is that it would have never worked if we didn't have a pandemic. And here's the reason why, because most people, unless you were in business, right, or had a podcast, nobody knew how to use Zoom, right? Especially grandparents, parents. I mean, my parents can barely work their iPhone, never mind Zoom, right? But then when it became our only way to communicate, right, and everybody was locked in their houses and everyone's like, hey, get on Zoom. Let's have house parties on Zoom. Let's do Zoom. Zoom now has become, a standard on every single person's computer. Everybody has Zoom. Everyone knows how to work Zoom. So the pandemic really forced us all to get on the platform. So what was really cool is as we were at home and we were watching everybody doing the news. I don't know if you were like me, but I know like our local stations, everybody was at home doing the news. Especially like I remember seeing on the Today Show, Hoda was at home and all these things, and everybody was just broadcasting from their house. My team had a great idea, and they were like, Matt, they were like, what if we tried to do your events online? And I remember thinking to myself, like, there's no way this is gonna work, right? And it's actually funny because like there were some other people who like we wanted to help to make it work, like other parts of the team. They're like, yeah, no, they're like, I don't think that's gonna work. I don't know. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't know if it was gonna work with my ability. I'm like, obviously I do private readings by phone and by Zoom and by Skype, and it's easy to do one-on-ones, but to have all these different families there, all these different people, and to read everybody at once, I'm like, how is it gonna work? So I decided to do just one event. I'm like, I will sign up. I will do one online event just to see if it works. And I was shitting my pants, Dave, because I'm saying to myself, like God forbid, like if it doesn't work, right? Like, how do I
Yeah,
know
it's
who
like
to
a
read? How do
different
I know who to
medium.
go to? Yeah, it was the first time. It was my first experience. And then what I realized is that it really was no different. The moment that everybody started to show up on the screen, not only were they there, but their loved ones in spirit were there as well. So one minute I was talking to somebody in California who had lost their son. To next thing you know, talking to somebody in Maine who had lost their brother. To talking to somebody in New York who had lost their mother. And literally, all of a sudden, like people started finding out about these online readings, and they've just been sold out for the past 3 years. It's been crazy.
Wow. Well, we also see in this new show, like you said, you did get married to Alexa. You're now a father. I know you've known her forever, but they say, when you're married, it feels different. So, I mean, does it feel different now that you're married?
It does feel different. It does. And you know what the weirdest thing is? So I think the thing that really feels different is saying that's my wife, or like her saying that's my husband. I think that's like that still kind of like gives you the butterflies when you say it for the first time, because like it kind of sets in. Like even though you go and you take your vows and you walk down the aisle, you don't realize it until you start using those terms.
What about how has fatherhood changed you? Are you getting any sleep? Is she getting any sleep?
So I gotta tell you something. I learned a lot. I mean, a lot about everything about having a baby, right? Because I had no idea. I walked in blindsided. Everyone was like, "Oh, it's gonna be so tough. Oh, you don't know." Blah blah blah. And I didn't know until I got in. But I learned something really amazing. This is the one secret that I have to share with everybody because I wish that I knew this, David, beforehand. And that is that nobody does it alone. Everybody has help. And that's the one thing that Alexa and I wish we would have known about, because when we came in, we're like, first of all, we weren't getting any sleep. The baby was up every hour on the hour. We like couldn't have visitors because we were just so exhausted. We were sleeping anytime the baby was sleeping. Everyone was just saying, "Oh, sleep when the baby sleeps." Well,